The station hung in the darkness like a massive wheel, its lights piercing the void of space. Krevter was neutral ground, a place where disputes between star nations were settled without war. Today, the Galactic Coliseum buzzed with thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds. They came to watch what promised to be the shortest combat trial in recent memory. Commander Jiwan walked through the curved hallways, her boots clicking softly on the metal floor. She wore simple gray combat gear, nothing fancy or impressive. Her black hair was tied back in a practical bun. She carried no visible weapons except a standard-issue blade on her belt. Behind her walked 3 other humans from Earth's diplomatic corps, all wearing worried expressions. "Are you sure about this?" asked Ambassador Minha, an older woman with silver streaking her dark hair. "We could still negotiate. Give them the mining rights they want. Keep the agricultural zones for ourselves." Jiwan shook her head. "They don't want compromise. They want us to bow, to admit we're weak." She glanced at the ambassador. "That colony world is home to 15,000 humans now. I won't let them feel ashamed of what they are." The hallway opened into a vast circular chamber. The arena floor stretched out below, a flat expanse of pale blue material that seemed to absorb light. Rising up on all sides were seats filled with aliens of every imaginable shape. Some had scales, others fur or chitin. Some breathed oxygen, others sat in special atmosphere bubbles. All of them turned to look as Jiwan emerged. The laughter started immediately. It began as scattered chirps and rumbles from different sections, then grew into a wave of sound that washed over the arena. A 4-armed creature slapped its knees. A floating, jellyfish-like being pulsed with colors that Jiwan's translator device indicated meant amusement. Even the supposedly dignified members of the Galactic Council shifted in their elevated seats, making sounds that suggested barely contained mockery. Across the arena, a massive door ground open. War Master Thalen stepped through, and the laughter turned to cheers. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his body covered in interlocking plates of natural armor that gleamed like polished stone. 4 eyes sat in a broad face, each one tracking movement independently. His arms were as thick as tree trunks, corded with muscle that rippled beneath his gray-green skin. He wore minimal armor because he barely needed it. His own height could deflect most weapons. In his right hand, he carried a blade as long as Jiwan was tall. Thalen looked across the arena at the human and laughed. The sound boomed through the chamber, deep and resonant. He made a show of setting his primary blade aside, drawing instead a smaller knife meant for ceremonial purposes. "I will not dishonor myself by using a warrior's weapon against you. Soft flesh." His voice carried easily across the space, translated instantly for all listeners. "Perhaps I should fight you with my hands bound, or standing on one leg." More laughter rippled through the crowd. Jiwan said nothing. She walked steadily to the center of the arena, her face calm. The arbiter descended from above, a floating sphere of crystalline material that served as both referee and recorder. Its mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "This combat trial is witnessed by the Galactic Council and all assembled representatives. The dispute, territorial rights to the colony world designated as Haven 3 by Earth, and Korval Minor by the Velkari Empire. The human champion is Commander Jiwan of Earth's diplomatic corps. The Velkari champion is War Master Thalen, who has prevailed in 73 previous trials." The crowd roared at the mention of Thalen's record. Someone started chanting his name. "The trial begins when both champions acknowledge readiness," the arbiter continued. "It ends when one champion yields, falls unconscious, or dies. Medical teams stand ready. Do both champions understand these terms?" "I understand," Thalen said, grinning broadly. He twirled his ceremonial knife. "This will take perhaps 2 minutes. Less if the human has sense to yield immediately." "I understand," Jiwan said quietly. "Then begin." Thalen didn't move. He stood with his arms crossed, the knife held loosely in one hand. "Come then, soft flesh. Show me what humans believe passes for combat. I hear your kind are talkers and thinkers. Do you plan to bore me to death with words?" Jiwan closed her eyes. She took one deep breath, filling her lungs completely, then exhaled slowly. Her hands hung loose at her sides. She stood perfectly still for 3 heartbeats. In the control room high above the arena, a Velkari technician frowned at his instrument panel. "That's odd," he muttered to his colleague. "What?" the other technician asked, not looking up from his own screens. Seismic sensor just registered a tremor. Very faint, probably just a glitch. He tapped the screen. The reading disappeared. Down in the arena, Jiwan opened her eyes. She began to move. She didn't charge or shout or make any aggressive motion. She simply started walking in a circle around Thalen, maintaining a distance of about 10 meters. Her steps were measured and even. Her breathing was steady. Thalen watched her, amusement clear on his face. Running already? I haven't even moved yet. He turned to follow her movement. This is what humans do? Circle and hope the opponent dies of old age? Some aliens in the crowd found this hilarious. Others began to look confused. This wasn't how combat trials usually went. Champions typically rushed at each other, trading powerful blows until one fell. This human was just walking. Jiwan continued her circle. Her heart beat steadily in her chest. She focused on it, feeling the rhythm. 70 beats per minute, normal resting rate. She let herself feel the blood moving through her veins, carrying oxygen to her muscles. She felt her lungs expand and contract. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Her grandmother had taught her this meditation when she was 6 years old. Focus on the body. Feel every part of it. Become aware. Enough of this, Thalen said. The amusement was fading from his voice, replaced by irritation. A champion of his status shouldn't have to chase his opponent around like a child playing games. He moved. Despite his size, Thalen was fast. He closed the distance in 3 long strides and swung his knife in a horizontal arc, meant to force Jiwan to either block or retreat. Jiwan stepped inward, inside the arc of the swing. The knife passed behind her by centimeters. She could feel the air displacement against her back. She didn't strike at Thalen, didn't try to grapple or attack. She simply moved past him and continued her circular path. Thalen spun faster now and lunged. Jiwan sidestepped. He swung again, a vertical strike that would have split her in half. She swayed to the left, minimal movement, just enough. The knife struck the arena floor with a clang that echoed through the chamber. The laughter had stopped now. The crowd watched in silence, trying to understand what they were seeing. Jiwan's heart rate had increased, 85 beats per minute. She acknowledged this and kept moving. Her breathing remained controlled, in, out, in, out. Her feet touched the arena floor in a steady rhythm. Step, step, step. In the control room, the technician saw another seismic reading. Stronger this time. There it is again, he said, concern entering his voice. His colleague leaned over to look. That's not a glitch. What is that? It's rhythmic. Below, Thalen attacked again, and this time there was no amusement in his movements. Only growing frustration and the first tiny seed of something that might have been concern. Thalen struck again, his blade cutting through the space where Jiwan had been a heartbeat before. She moved like water, flowing around his attacks without apparent effort. The crowd watched in growing confusion as the massive warrior chased the small human around the arena floor. What they couldn't know, was that this moment had been decades in the making. 28 years earlier, a child named Jiwan was born aboard the colony ship Taejang during its long journey to a distant star. The ship was home to 5,000 humans, all of them committed to building a new life far from Earth. Space was limited aboard the Taejang, but the colonists made sure every child learned the old ways. Jiwan's grandmother taught her traditional martial arts in a cargo bay converted to a training hall. Feel your breath, her grandmother would say, hands resting on young Jiwan's shoulders. Your breath is the beginning of everything. When you control your breath, you control your body. When you control your body, you control your fate. Jiwan learned to punch and kick, to block and dodge, but more importantly, she learned to be aware. Aware of her heartbeat, aware of the tension in her muscles, aware of the rhythm of her own existence. When Jiwan turned 18, the Taejang reached its destination and the colonists began building their settlement on a rocky planet they named New Seoul. But Jiwan didn't stay. She returned to Earth on a transport ship because she'd received an invitation. The military wanted her for something special. The resonance program was small and highly classified. Only 50 candidates were selected each year from across all of Earth's colonies and settlements. Jiwan reported to a facility hidden in the mountains of what used to be Korea, where she met Commander Park, the program's director. We've been studying human biology for centuries, Park told the new recruits on their first day. We've compared it to every alien species we've encountered, and we've discovered something interesting. Humans are weak, Some of the recruits shifted uncomfortably. G1 remained still, listening. "We're weak," Park continued, "compared to most species. A Velkari can lift 3 times what any human can. A Chronate has armor skin we can't penetrate with our bare hands. A Sylph moves faster than we can see. By almost every measure of physical capability, humans rank in the bottom third of known species." Park smiled then, and there was something fierce in that smile. "But there's one thing humans do better than any species we've ever met. We keep going. We don't stop. Our biology is optimized not for explosive power, but for sustained effort over time." Over the next 4 years, Ji-won learned what that meant. She learned that human hearts were unique in the galaxy. Most alien species had hearts designed for brief, intense activity. They could generate enormous power for short periods, then needed to rest. Human hearts were different. They could maintain elevated rates for hours, even days, without failing. She learned about persistence hunting, an ancient human practice. Her ancestors would choose a prey animal and simply chase it. Not fast, just steady. The animal would run until it was exhausted, then walk. The humans would jog after it. The animal would run again, panic giving it speed, but the humans would keep jogging. Eventually, hours or even days later, the animal would collapse from heat exhaustion and simple fatigue. The humans would walk up to it, still able to function, and make the kill. Most species evolved to escape predators or catch prey through speed and power, her instructor explained. Humans evolved to simply outlast everything, to keep moving when every other creature on Earth had stopped. But the Resonance program taught more than biology lessons. They taught practical application. Ji-won learned to weaponize her own cardiovascular system. She learned that her heartbeat created vibrations. Tiny, normally insignificant vibrations that spread through whatever surface she stood on. She learned to control her heart rate through breathing and mental focus, speeding it up or slowing it down at will. She learned that by matching her heartbeat to her footfalls and timing her strikes to coincide with specific beats, she could create harmonic frequencies. In the training facility's special chamber, Ji-won spent months learning to sense resonance. The floor was made of the same material used in most galactic construction, a crystalline composite that was strong and stable. But it had a property that its creators thought was a benefit. It dampened most vibrations, preventing seismic disturbances from spreading through structures. What the program discovered was that this dampening effect had limits. At certain frequencies, the material didn't dampen but amplified, and human heartbeats, when properly controlled and sustained, could hit those frequencies. "You won't shake down a building," Commander Park told them. "That's not what this is about. But you can create enough vibration to throw off an opponent's balance, to make them uncertain of their footing. Combined with human endurance, it becomes a significant tactical advantage." Ji-won became one of the program's top graduates. She could run a marathon and maintain perfect heart rate control the entire time. She could fight for hours, her heartbeat a weapon that grew stronger the longer the combat lasted. While other species grew tired, their hearts struggling to maintain activity, Ji-won's heart would settle into a steady rhythm that could continue almost indefinitely. Now in the arena on Krevtar Station, all that training came into play. Thalen was strong, incredibly strong. When his blade struck the arena floor, it left marks in the supposedly indestructible surface. When he moved, the ground trembled under his weight. But Ji-won noticed something that the crowd, focused on the spectacle, might have missed. Thalen was breathing harder now. Just slightly, but her trained ear caught it. She'd been moving for 10 minutes. Constant motion, never stopping, always making him chase and swing and turn. 10 minutes was nothing to her. Her heart rate had risen to 90 beats per minute. Elevated but nowhere near her maximum. She felt good. Strong. Her breathing was still controlled, still steady. Thalen, despite his size and power, had 3 hearts. She'd studied Velkari biology extensively. Those 3 hearts were designed for explosive combat. They could flood his muscles with oxygenated blood in seconds, giving him incredible burst strength. But they weren't designed for sustained activity. They were sprinters' hearts, not marathon runners' hearts. Ji-won's single human heart beating away in her chest was built for a different kind of war. She continued her circular path, and with each beat, with each step, the vibrations in the arena floor grew infinitesimally stronger. The technicians in the control room were now actively monitoring the seismic readings, conferring in worried tones. The arbiter, floating above, registered the vibrations but found nothing in its programming that said they were illegal. The trial continued. In the crowd, Ambassador Minha watched with growing hope. Next to her, the human medical officer named Dayun leaned forward, studying Jiwon's movements with professional interest. "She's barely started," Dayun whispered. "Look at her breathing. She could do this all day." Thalen struck again, faster, harder, anger beginning to show in his movements. Jiwon slipped past the blade, and her hand brushed against his armored side. Not a strike, but a touch, almost gentle. She was measuring him, feeling the tension in his muscles, sensing the rhythm of his breathing, learning him. Her heart beat steady and strong. The ground trembled with it, and the real fight had only just begun. 15 minutes had passed since the trial began. Thalen's amusement had died completely, replaced by grim determination. He'd stopped making jokes, stopped playing with the ceremonial knife. Now he fought seriously, and that meant the human should already be dead or broken on the arena floor. But she wasn't. Jiwon moved through his strikes like smoke through fingers. Every attack missed by the smallest margin. She never tried to block or parry, never attempted to match his strength against hers. She simply wasn't there when his blade arrived, and she never stopped moving. Thalen's first heart was pounding hard now, pumping furiously to keep his massive muscles supplied with oxygen. His second heart had kicked in 5 minutes ago, taking over some of the load. He could feel sweat beginning to form beneath his armor plates, his body's attempt to cool itself. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. In his 73 previous trials, the longest had lasted 8 minutes. Most ended in under 5. Combat was supposed to be explosive, decisive, glorious. Two warriors met. They exchanged blows. One proved superior. Simple. Clean. This human woman had turned it into something else entirely. Something that felt less like a duel and more like being hunted. Jiwon's heart rate had increased to 110 beats per minute. She registered this calmly, part of her mind always monitoring her body's state. Still comfortable. Still sustainable. She could maintain this for hours if needed. Her breathing remained controlled, following the pattern her grandmother had taught her decades ago. 4 beats in, 4 beats out, never rushed, never panicked. With each beat of her heart, vibrations spread through the arena floor. The crystalline composite material had begun to respond to the sustained frequency. Small oscillations spread outward from wherever her feet touched down, creating interference patterns that made the surface subtly unstable. Thalen felt it now, even if he didn't understand what caused it. The floor beneath his feet felt wrong. Every time he planted his weight for a power strike, there was a moment of uncertainty. Not enough to make him fall, but enough to reduce the force of his blows by a fraction. Enough to make his footing feel treacherous. "Stand still and fight," he roared. Frustration breaking through his warrior's discipline. He charged forward, bringing his blade down in a devastating overhead strike that would have split a boulder. Jiwon stepped aside, and the blade struck the arena floor with a tremendous clang. The impact sent visible ripples through the crystalline surface. Thalen wrenched the blade free and spun, sweeping it horizontally at head height. This time Jiwon ducked, dropped her hands to the floor, and swept her leg out. Her foot connected with Thalen's ankle. Under normal circumstances, it would have been like kicking a stone pillar. The Velkari's natural armor and dense bone structure made him nearly immovable. But the floor trembled at exactly the wrong moment. The vibrations reached a peak just as Jiwon's sweep connected. Thalen's weight shifted. His foot slipped by a centimeter, and suddenly he was off balance. He didn't fall. His warrior's training wouldn't allow that, but he had to take a step back to recover. The crowd saw it. A ripple of surprise moved through the assembled aliens. The mighty Thalen, undefeated in 73 trials, had been forced to step backward by a human's kick. In the control room, the head engineer arrived. His name was Hyuk, and he was a crystalline being whose entire body resonated with vibrations. He could sense frequencies the way humans saw colors. He looked at the seismic monitors, and his faceted surface paled. "What's causing this?" he demanded. The technician pointed at the screen showing the arena. "It started when the human began moving. The frequency increases with her activity level." Hyuk watched Jiwon circle away from another of Thalen's strikes. He extended his senses, feeling for the source of the vibrations. It took him several seconds to believe what he was detecting. "That's impossible," he whispered. "The resonance is coming from her heartbeat." 20 minutes. Thalen's third heart had engaged now, all 3 of his cardiovascular organs working together to keep his massive body functioning. His breathing was heavy, audible even over the sound of combat. His strikes were still powerful, still dangerous, but they came fractionally slower than before. Jiwon's heart rate had climbed to 125 beats per minute. She'd increased her pace, no longer just circling but weaving complex patterns across the arena floor. She was running now, light steps that barely seemed to touch down before lifting again. Human feet, evolved for persistence running across long distances. Human legs, designed for efficiency rather than raw power. Every step, every heartbeat, added to the resonance building in the arena floor. The vibrations were no longer subtle. Aliens in the lower seats could feel it through their chairs. Those with sensitive hearing or vibration detection organs looked uncomfortable. Thalen charged again, and Jiwon did something unexpected. She ran straight at him. The crowd gasped. Finally, they thought the human would engage properly, but at the last second, Jiwon dropped into a slide, using her momentum to carry her between Thalen's legs. His blade swept over her, missing by half a meter. She rolled to her feet behind him and immediately resumed running. The War Master spun, and for the first time Jiwon saw something in his 4 eyes that looked like worry. He was breathing through his mouth now, his chest plates heaving with each breath. A line of darker moisture ran down his armored face. He was sweating. "What
are you?"
he panted. Jiwon didn't answer. Her focus was internal now, on the rhythm of her body. Her heart thundered in her chest, a war drum that had been beating steadily for 25 minutes. Most species would be exhausted. Most species would be begging for rest. But Jiwon's human heart was designed for exactly this. It could beat like this for hours. It could beat like this for days if necessary. Her ancestors had chased prey across the African savanna under the burning sun, running for 8 hours straight until the animal collapsed. They had walked across continents, covering thousands of miles through every terrain imaginable, never stopping, never giving up. That same biology lived in her cells, in the structure of her cardiovascular system, in the chemistry of her muscles that resisted fatigue far longer than seemed possible. 30 minutes. Thalen's attacks had become desperate. He knew something was wrong. His body, so powerful and reliable, was failing him. Not from injury, but from simple exhaustion. His hearts pounded but couldn't keep up with the oxygen demands. His muscles burned with fatigue. His vision swam slightly from overexertion. The human was still running, still moving, still making the ground shake with every beat of her heart. The arena floor had become a drumhead, resonating with the sustained frequency of Jiwon's cardiovascular system. Cracks had begun to appear in some of the seating areas. Structural support beams vibrated visibly. In the control room, Hyuk was shouting orders to his engineers, trying to determine if the station itself was in danger. 40 minutes. Thalen dropped to one knee. Not from a strike or a fall, but because his legs simply wouldn't hold him anymore. His 3 hearts hammered frantically, his breathing ragged and desperate. He looked up at Jiwon through blurred vision. She stood 10 meters away, still moving, shifting her weight from foot to foot. Her heart beat like thunder, the sound seeming to fill the entire arena. The ground pulsed with each beat. She was breathing harder now, yes, but her breathing was still controlled, still steady. She looked like she could continue for hours more. Thalen understood then. He'd been defeated not by superior strength or skill, but by simple endurance. By a human heart that refused to stop beating no matter what. The Galactic Colosseum had fallen completely silent. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds sat frozen, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The only sound was the rhythmic thunder of Jiwon's heartbeat echoing through the crystalline floor, making the entire structure resonate like a massive bell. Thalen remained on one knee, his chest heaving, all 3 hearts straining. He raised one massive hand in the traditional gesture of surrender. His voice came out hoarse and broken. "I yield." The Arbiter descended, its crystalline sphere pulsing with light. War Master Thalen has yielded. Commander Jiwon of Earth is declared victor. The disputed world of Haven 3 is awarded to humanity by right of combat. The crowd erupted, but not with cheers. With confused murmuring, shocked exclamations, and heated debates in 100 different languages. This wasn't how trials were supposed to end. Where was the decisive blow, the dramatic clash of warriors? One fighter had simply stopped. Exhausted into surrender without a single serious wound, Jiwon finally allowed herself to slow down. She took several deep breaths, consciously lowering her heart rate. 130 beats per minute, 120, 110. The vibrations in the arena floor began to diminish, the resonance slowly fading. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor, some heading for Thalen, others approaching Jiwan cautiously. The human medic Daeun reached her first, scanning her with a handheld device. "You're barely injured," Daeun said with obvious relief. "Some bruising from near misses, elevated heart rate, mild dehydration. Nothing serious. I'll take some water," Jiwan said. Her voice was steady, though she was breathing harder than normal. "And maybe a protein bar. I worked up an appetite." The Velkari medical team was surrounding Thalen with concern. Their instruments showed extreme cardiovascular stress, muscle fatigue, and dangerous levels of exhaustion. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough that they wouldn't let him stand immediately. Yuk, the crystalline engineer, appeared on the arena floor in a state of controlled panic. He was accompanied by several assistants carrying scanning equipment. They moved around the arena, checking for structural damage. "The support beams in Section 7 are showing stress fractures," one assistant reported, "and the resonance dampeners in the western quadrant are completely burned out." Hayuk turned to look at Jiwan, who was now sitting on the arena floor drinking water. His crystalline surface reflected the arena lights in sharp angles. "You did this," he said. Not an accusation, but a statement of awed disbelief. "With your heartbeat. How is that possible?" Ambassador Minya stepped forward, diplomatic instincts taking over. "Perhaps we should move this discussion to a more private setting. The trial has concluded, and there's much to explain." But the Galactic Council representatives were already descending from their elevated seats, along with military observers from a dozen different species. They weren't going to wait for private explanations. They needed to understand what they'd just witnessed. An hour later, they gathered in a conference chamber adjacent to the arena. Thalen was there, recovered enough to walk but still moving stiffly. The council representatives, military observers, and various dignitaries filled the room. Jiwan stood at one end, composed despite being the center of attention. Ambassador Mina activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. "Let me tell you about human evolution," she began. The presentation detailed humanity's origins as persistence hunters. Videos showed ancient humans jogging across grasslands under brutal sun. Graphics illustrated the unique properties of human cardiovascular systems, sweat glands, and metabolic efficiency. "Most species evolved for burst activity," Mina explained. "Brief periods of intense exertion followed by rest. Humans evolved differently. We evolved to keep moving, sometimes for days at a time, until our prey simply collapsed from exhaustion." A Velkari military observer, his armor plates darker than Thalen's, spoke up. "But War Master Thalen has superior strength, superior armor, superior weapons. How does endurance overcome such advantages?" Mina smiled. "Because Commander Jiwan never tried to overcome those advantages. She made them irrelevant. You can't use superior strength if you're too exhausted to lift your weapon. Armor doesn't matter if you never get hit. She didn't defeat War Master Thalen. She waited for him to defeat himself." Thalen shifted in his seat. The motion drew attention to him. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of hard-won understanding. "I have fought 73 trials, against Chronite warriors, against Sylph assassins, against Draken berserkers. I won every time because I am stronger than they are." He paused. "But today I learned that strength means nothing against an opponent who simply refuses to stop." One of the council representatives, a floating being whose species communicated through color changes, asked a question that her translator rendered as, "Is this ability common among humans?" Jiwan answered this time, "Every human has this biology, but the resonance program teaches us to weaponize it, to turn our heartbeat into a tactical advantage. There are only a few hundred of us trained in the technique, but our basic endurance is universal to our species." The implications rippled through the room. A species that could fight for hours without tiring. Warriors who got stronger the longer combat lasted. A military force that could pursue enemies not with overwhelming firepower, but with relentless, patient persistence. A military strategist from the Torath Collective, a usually aggressive species, spoke quietly. "We would have to completely rethink our doctrine. Our strategy is based on decisive strikes and rapid victories. Against humans, such tactics would play to our advantage," Minha finished gently. "Yes. Every species develops military strategy around their biology. You can't help it, but human biology is optimized for exactly what you saw today." Not brief combat, but sustained operations. Not explosive power, but steady pressure. Thalen stood, still moving carefully. He approached Jiwan and, after a moment's hesitation, placed his hand over his primary heart in the Velkari gesture of respect. Before this day, I believed humans were weak. I laughed at your soft skin, your small size, your lack of natural weapons. He paused. I did not understand that what I saw as weakness was actually efficiency. You don't need thick armor because you don't plan to be where the strike lands. You don't need explosive strength because you're optimized for sustained effort. I underestimated you and I paid the price. Jiwan returned the gesture, placing her hand over her own heart. You're a skilled warrior, War Master. In a different kind of fight on different terms, the outcome might have been very different. But this trial was fought on ground that favored human biology. I had the advantage. No, Thalen said firmly. You didn't have an advantage. You are the advantage. Your entire species is built for persistence, for never giving up, for continuing when any other species would have stopped. He looked around the room at all the assembled representatives. I came here believing this would be my easiest victory. Instead, it became my most important lesson. The room fell quiet. Finally, the lead council representative spoke. This trial has concluded according to law. The world of Haven 3 belongs to humanity, but more than territory has been decided today. The galaxy's understanding of human capabilities has evolved. As the meeting broke up, delegates clustered in small groups, talking urgently. Military observers were already sending reports to their governments. The Velkari ambassador approached Minha with a revised treaty proposal, one far more favorable to human interests than the original had been. Jiwan stood by a viewport, looking out at the stars. Daeun joined her. You okay? The medic asked. Tired, Jiwan admitted. My legs are going to hurt tomorrow. But okay. She smiled slightly. I kept thinking about my grandmother during the fight. About what she taught me. Feel your breath. Control your body. Your heart is a drum that plays the rhythm of life. She said that when I was 6 years old. Today that rhythm shook an arena. Daeun nodded. News is spreading fast. Every human settlement, every colony, every ship. They're all hearing about this. About what you proved. I didn't prove anything new, Jiwan said. I just reminded the galaxy of something they'd forgotten. Humans don't quit. We keep going. It's what we've always done. 3 weeks had passed since the trial on Krevtar Station. In that time, the recording of the fight had been watched by billions of beings across the galaxy. Military academies analyzed it frame by frame. Medical institutes studied G1's physiological data, trying to understand how a single heart could sustain such effort. Philosophers debated the implications of a species evolved for persistence rather than power. The Velkari Empire had withdrawn all claims to Haven 3. More than that, they'd signed a non-aggression treaty with Earth. The treaty included a clause that made several human diplomats laugh quietly. It specifically stated that any future disputes would be settled through negotiation rather than combat trials. The Velkari had decided that fighting humans wasn't worth the risk. Commander Jiwan stood on the colony world that humans called Haven 3, breathing air that still smelled slightly wrong. The planet's atmosphere was breathable but had different chemical traces than Earth's. The colonists said you got used to it after a few months. Everything smelled like rain and copper. The colony's central plaza had been completed while she was away. 15,000 humans lived here now, building homes and farms, establishing schools and workshops. Children played in the open spaces between buildings. She watched them run and chase each other, their laughter carrying on the wind. They didn't know it yet, but they could run like that for hours. It was in their biology, coded into every cell. Captain Daeun found her there, looking out over the growing settlement. The medic carried 2 cups of coffee, real coffee from earth beans grown in the colony's greenhouse. She handed one to Jiwan. Thank you, Jiwan said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. How's the clinic? Busy, Daeun replied. Mostly minor injuries. Construction accidents, some farming mishaps. Nothing serious, she sipped her coffee. I've been getting messages from Earth, from the Resonance program. They want you to come back, help train the next group of recruits. Jiwan was quiet for a moment. What about you? Are you staying here? For now. These people need medical support, and I like it here. Daeun smiled. Besides, someone needs to be here to treat all the injuries when the colonists inevitably decide to test how long they can work without resting. Humans are stubborn that way. We are, Jiwan agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the colony go about its daily business. A group of farmers walked past, heading toward the fields. A construction crew was working on a new residential building, the sound of their tools echoing across the plaza. Everything moved with purpose, with energy, with the relentless forward momentum that characterized humanity. Do you think about it? Daeun asked after a while. About what happened in the arena? Every day, Jiwan said. Not the fight itself. That was just movement, just doing what I was trained to do. But what it meant, what it showed. She paused, searching for the right words. My grandmother used to tell me about the old days on Earth, about how humans spread across the entire planet, walking from Africa to every continent, crossing deserts and mountains and oceans. No other species did that. Other animals stayed in their ecological niches, but humans just kept walking. And now we're walking among the stars, Daeun said softly. Yes, but it's the same thing, the same persistence. We don't stop. We don't give up. When other species see an obstacle, they find a way around it or they stop. Humans see an obstacle and just keep pushing until it moves. Jiwan took a drink of her coffee. That's what scared the Velkari. Not my fighting ability. The idea that humans would just keep coming, keep trying, keep pushing, forever if necessary. A young girl, maybe 7 years old, ran up to them. Her name was Bora, and she was one of the colony's first generation of children born on Haven 3. Commander Jiwan, she said excitedly. Is it true you made the whole arena shake with just your heartbeat? Jiwan knelt down to the girl's level. It's true. The floor was made of special material that vibrated when I ran for a long time. Can you teach me? Bora asked. I want to make the ground shake too. Jiwan smiled. First you learn to run. Really run for a long time without stopping. Can you do that? Yes, Bora said immediately. I ran all the way to the eastern farms yesterday. My mom said I didn't even look tired. That's because you're human, Jiwan told her. Your heart is strong. It's designed to keep beating no matter what. When you run, you're doing what your ancestors did thousands of years ago on Earth. Never forget that. Your body is built for amazing things. Bora beamed and ran off to tell her friends. Daeun chuckled. You're going to have 50 kids wanting to learn combat from you now. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Jiwan said, standing. They should know what they're capable of. That evening, Jiwan walked to the edge of the colony settlement where the buildings gave way to the planet's natural landscape. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that Earth's sky never quite matched. She found a flat rock and sat down, looking out over the alien terrain. She placed her hand flat against the rock beneath her. It was cool and smooth, worn by winds that had blown across this planet for millions of years before humans arrived. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips, the steady rhythm of her heart. 72 beats per minute. Resting rate. Calm and steady. That heart had been beating since before she was born, pumping blood through her small body as she developed in her mother's womb. It had beaten every moment of her life since then, through childhood and training, through the journey to Earth and back, through combat and peace and every moment in between. It would keep beating until the day she died, and then it would stop. But the rhythm wouldn't stop. Not really. Other human hearts were beating right now all across this colony. 15,000 hearts all pumping away with the same steady persistence. On Earth and on dozens of colony worlds, billions of human hearts maintained their rhythm. On ships crossing the darkness between stars, on stations orbiting distant suns wherever humans had gone, that same beat continued. It was the echo of Earth, the rhythm of a planet where life had evolved to persist, to endure, to continue against all odds. Humans carried that rhythm in their chests, and they carried it across the galaxy. Jiwan thought about Thalon, wondering what he was doing now. She hoped he'd recovered fully from the exhaustion. She hoped he understood that she respected him, that the fight wasn't personal. She'd simply been doing what her biology allowed, what her training had perfected. More than that, she hoped he'd learned the lesson that would spread through the galaxy. Humans weren't weak. They were different, optimized for a different kind of conflict, a different kind of challenge. They were built to last, to persist, to keep going when everything else had stopped. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Jiwan recognized some constellations from Earth's sky, though they looked different from this angle, this distance. She wondered how many of those stars had human colonies orbiting them now. How many would in another 100 years, another 1,000 years? Humans would keep spreading, keep walking, keep pushing outward into the universe, not because they were stronger or faster or more advanced than other species, but because they simply wouldn't stop. Her heartbeat was steady against the alien rock. The planet seemed to accept it. This new rhythm added to its ancient surface. In 1,000 years, this world would be thoroughly human, not conquered or dominated, but settled, lived in, made home. Human hearts would beat on its surface, human feet would walk its trails, human hands would plant gardens and build cities. And through it all, that persistent human heartbeat would continue, the echo of Earth spreading outward into the cosmos, a rhythm that refused to be silenced. Daeun's voice came from behind her. "You planning to sit out here all night? There's a council meeting in the morning. They want to officially thank you for securing the colony's future." Jiwon stood, brushing dust from her pants. "I'm coming." Just needed a moment to think. As they walked back toward the settlement, lights beginning to glow in windows as families settled in for the evening, Daeun asked, "What were you thinking about?" "About drum beats," Jiwon said. "About how every human carries a drum inside them that never stops playing. About how that rhythm has carried us from caves in Africa to colonies among the stars." She smiled. "And about how the galaxy is just beginning to understand what that means." Above them, the stars watched. And on worlds across that galaxy, military strategists rewrote their doctrines. Diplomats revised their assumptions, and teachers told their students about the species that could shake the ground with nothing but a heartbeat. The species that simply wouldn't stop. Humans had arrived among the stars, and they'd brought with them the most powerful weapon in their arsenal. Not technology or strength or speed, but persistence. The ability to keep going, keep trying, keep pushing forward no matter what obstacles appeared. They'd walked out of Africa and covered Earth. Now they walked among the stars, and their heartbeats, millions and then billions of them, created a rhythm the universe couldn't ignore. The echo of Earth, spreading outward into infinity, patient, persistent, and utterly unstoppable.